What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Cosmic Wonder. This is going to be our Daredevil Episode 3 breakdown. In the premiere of Daredevil Born Again, Episodes 1 and 2 showed us Bullseye returning and killing Foggy. At least that's what it seems like. We do have that Easter egg outside of the law firm that points to the comics where Foggy actually fakes his death. So is he actually dead? We're not entirely sure right now. But just to clarify for those who may be wondering and have been asking, nothing about what happened in Episode 1 would have been staged. Bullseye was really going after Foggy and Karen. He really did shoot Foggy through the heart. That was all real. How he might be alive is he was resuscitated by the EMTs or paramedics on site. He would have then been taken to the ER and managed to survive. After that, Matt told him, "You can no longer be in New York City anymore, and we have to act like you really are dead." From there, he would have had him move, and he might be in San Francisco with Karen. So if Foggy is alive, none of it was staged. They're just taking advantage of a terrible situation. And again, in the comics, Foggy does fake his death because Matt wants him to. And they both even moved to California. But the events of Episode 1 caused Matt Murdock to no longer be Daredevil. Then in Episode 2, in order to find a witness for his client, Hector Ayala, aka the White Tiger, he finds himself in the midst of two dirty cops who are trying to kill him, so the devil comes back out. And that's where Episode 3 picks up. Matt goes to visit Hector in jail, and the first thing he asks is, "Have they brought you any food?" And Hector says, "No." And the reason is the cops aren't bringing him any food because they believe him to be a cop killer. So they're treating him very poorly, and one way to do that is to not give him food. When Matt gets in, Hector starts talking about one of his favorite places from his home, Puerto Rico. And there's a really important reason that they're showing us this scene. One is that Hector probably doesn't believe that he's going to make it out. He's fearing that he'll never see that beach again. But two, Hector Ayala, aka the White Tiger, was the first Puerto Rican superhero in comics, and Marvel's first Latino superhero, first appearing in 1975. So they're paying homage to his Puerto Rican origin in this scene, but at the end, Matt assures him he won't be found guilty and he'll be able to go back home once again and see those beaches. Now, Matt is really confident in this because they currently have in their possession the witness that they need to prove Hector was simply defending that witness. And he didn't know that the two men who were beating up on the guy were cops. Then we see a deal gone wrong. We know that this was a deal between two crime families, the crime families that currently Vanessa is essentially in charge of, and kind of Kingpin as well. The result of this ends with two people from one side dead. And this ties into the scene with Wilson and Vanessa eating breakfast. Now, this is meant to show us how separated Wilson and Vanessa are right now. In Episode 2, we saw the two of them go to therapy, and the marriage counselor just happened to be Matt Murdock's current girlfriend, Heather Glenn. But if you recall from the Daredevil Netflix series, Kingpin would always sit at the end of the table, but Vanessa would sit right next to him on the corner. That showed us how close they were, but now in this scene right here, they are sitting on the complete opposite sides of the table. Vanessa mentions that some art is going back up for auction, and she's quite pleasantly surprised to hear that Wilson actually remembers the piece that she is talking about. It was most likely theirs at some point in time, but when Kingpin went to jail, it was probably put up for auction. That's why she mentions it's up for auction again. She's touched that he remembers, however, the tone quickly shifts, because she brings up the fact that she could smuggle a lot of money through that art piece, but unfortunately she can't because Kingpin is mayor, and she can't be caught doing anything illegal. And this is one of the things that is building tension between Vanessa and Kingpin. Vanessa loves what she built. She loves the old Kingpin. When he left, she was in charge, and she did a really good job running the business. She had power and respect, and a lot of money. So when Kingpin came back out of nowhere and wanted to kind of go straight edge, this put a really big, even more damper in their relationship. Both of them are informed about what happened on the docks at Red Hook, and Vanessa says basically without a leader, without her or Kingpin, all of the crime families are turning on each other, but this doesn't concern Kingpin too much. In the scene, Vanessa tries to get Kingpin involved once again, saying that, look, they're going to kill each other, and when they're done, they're going to come for us. But Kingpin says, that entire world, it's a bunch of rats, and it's not our concern anymore. I'm the mayor, implying that he's going to do things the right way. However, we then get a close-up shot on his knuckles, and it's not the first time in this series that we've seen him like that. And of course, this is to show us that on the side, he's not telling Vanessa about this, and we haven't seen it yet, but on the side, he's doing some shady stuff and quite literally getting his hands dirty. So we go from Kingpin's bruised up and bloody knuckles to Matt's bruised up and bloody knuckles. This is obviously from the fight that he had with the two dirty police officers, and when he's in the bathroom, he hears one of those officers about to come in. It's Officer Powell, the one who was also on the subway there, who arrested Hector. He comes in and we can see that he is super beaten up from his fight with Matt. Matt uses his blind card stating who's there. Are you talking to me? I'm blind, dude. Now, Officer Powell steps in his way and tries to intimidate him, saying that you're interfering with the police investigation, but Matt quickly says, no, it was actually a shakedown, and although they don't say it, both of them know they would have killed Matt if he didn't beat the crap out of them. Officer Powell says, I could talk and get you thrown off the case, but Matt replies with, well, I won't go to jail. You will if I tell them what happened. Now, Matt is super confident right now because he has the witness, and we see Cherry going to a safe house to see that witness. As he's walking down the street, we can actually see the Punisher logo with the words triggered across the skull, and if you look to the bottom right there in that white box next to the painting, it says Muse. So again, we are being teased with Muse, but we haven't actually seen him yet, unless the person who was seeking help from Matt's girlfriend Heather Glenn, whose character in the credits is Bastion. He could end up being Muse, but we're not sure at this point in time. Muse's real name in the comics is never actually revealed, so we have no idea who it could be, but a lot of people are guessing that it could be this character. Cherry goes to the safe house where they're keeping Nikki Torres. The music is blaring and he's saying, hey, this is supposed to be a safe house. It's supposed to be someplace where we hide this person and protect him. Blaring music very loudly isn't exactly laying low, but it's basically explained that Nikki is a drug addict and the music help calms him down. However, Cherry brought him some drugs to help him get his fix. That way he can go to court and testify to the jury on behalf of Hector and basically keep it together without having to go through drug withdrawals. Then going to court, we have the lawyer, the Hawk, questioning Officer Powell. Now, Officer Powell could be Mike Powell from the comics. We're never actually told his first name. They always refer to him as Officer Powell, and even in the credits, it just says Powell. But what's very interesting is that in the comics, Mike Powell isn't a main character by any means, but he is a crooked cop who has a son, Chris Powell, who would eventually go on to find his father, Mike, taking a bribe from a mob boss, realizing that he's crooked, and his son would also go on to find an amulet that would give him powers and turn him into the superhero Darkhawk. I doubt that they're really going to do anything with this, but if this is Darkhawk's father, it is kind of an interesting correlation here. He's basically trying to put the White Tiger in jail, and he might even be the person who kills him at the end of this episode. And the White Tiger obviously gets his powers from the amulet, where his son might be essentially the same type of person, a crime fighter who gets his powers from an amulet. Again, I doubt they'll do anything with Darkhawk, but you never know. Now in court, Powell takes the stand and he just lies about the situation that happened. This obviously pisses off Hector since he's lying, which gets his heart racing, and they show us one of Matt's most useful abilities when it comes to being a lawyer. It primarily helps him tell who is lying or telling the truth, but in this instance, it helps him tell that Hector is getting frustrated and that he might react to this, so he tells him, don't react, because if he does, it won't look good for their case. So this is really just a chance to show us that Matt's abilities help him be a really good lawyer. Now, when Matt questions him, he takes a few jabs at him, mental jabs this time though, not physical. He mocks him and he says, I've heard that you got a black eye. I hope you're okay, obviously knowing that he's the one who gave it to him. And obviously Officer Powell can't say anything because if he does, Matt will explain that he tried to kill him. But Matt takes another jab at him and says, you know, there's a saying in boxing, the best cure for a black eye is fast hands. And this is basically telling him, I beat the crap out of you and you know it. Now Matt questions him and Powell again lies and says nobody was around at all. It was just the two cops and Hector. But then Matt drops the bomb that he actually has the other person that was there, the witness, Nikki Torres. And you can tell that obviously Powell knows who he is, even though he lies and says that he doesn't. But this is basically informing Officer Powell that he knows he's lying and he does have that witness. So Powell takes a look at another cop, then the cop leans over to the other cop next to him and says, Torres cannot testify. And he has that Punisher logo tattooed to his neck. It's the exact same tattoo that Powell has tattooed on his wrist that they showed us in episode 2. So this right here is showing us that these cops are dirty and they're all in some organization together. This is basically their calling card, how they know who is a part of this group, who they can trust inside of their dirty organization. It's basically how you can tell another cop is crooked. And the Punisher is not going to like that, and he most likely returns in the next episode. Now, of course, Matt, with his enhanced hearing, hears the cop tell the other one that Torres can't testify, so Matt knows they're going to do something to try and kill him. So when we see Cherry about to take Torres to the courthouse, the other officer says, should I be worried? Because he sees the gun that Cherry has, and Cherry says, yeah, you should be. This is because Matt has told Cherry, I heard a cop say Torres can't testify. They're going to try to kill him on the way to the courthouse. So the situation has everybody worried, including Kirsten, Matt's partner. But in court, Matt seems very confident that they're going to show up. Cool little detail to notice here is that when the judge comes in, obviously everybody stands, and when the judge sits down, everybody sits. Matt is obviously blind, so Kirsten gives him a little tap when the judge sits down, informing him, hey, you can sit down. Now, obviously, she doesn't know that he's Daredevil, and he has the ability to sense these things. It's a subtle little reminder that to everybody else in this world, Matt is a blind lawyer. Now, since Matt knew that they were going to track down Nicky Torres and try to kill him on the way to the courthouse, they came up with a nice little decoy to get him there, and it was actually Officer Powell who was there to kill him himself. But thanks to their clever ruse, he gets there. So Matt gets Nicky on the stand, and things seem to be going relatively well at first until he asks if Nicky was there at the subway station on New Year's Eve, which is when everything went down and the officer was killed. Matt hears his heart start to race, and he reminds him that he's under oath because he can tell due to his heart rate that he's about to lie. Nicky looks out to the cops, sees some of those crooked cops, knows that they will kill him if he testifies, and decides to lie, which obviously throws the case completely out of whack for Matt. Then we cut to Buck, Kingpin's right-hand man, kind of like our new Wesley. If you saw the Daredevil Netflix series, you know Wesley. He wasn't just Kingpin's right-hand man who got his hands very dirty for him, but he was also a friend to Kingpin who he really cared about. Now, ultimately, Karen would go on to kill him, and Karen would eventually reveal to Kingpin that she was the one to kill him, which is why Kingpin always had it out for Karen. And at the end, Matt made that deal for Kingpin to never go after Karen or Foggy, and he wouldn't go after Vanessa. So it looks like Buck is the person who's kind of filling that slot, at least for now. He goes to meet with the crime families, and what's interesting is they greet him by saying the mayor is 30 minutes late. So they weren't expecting Vanessa, even though she has been the one in charge for a very long time now. She's done a very great job at what she's been doing, but it seems like now that Kingpin has returned, everybody kind of goes, okay, well, Kingpin, he's the top guy. Now that he's back, he's the one in charge. And I think this is going to come to play in a big way with Vanessa and Kingpin, because again, I believe that Vanessa wants that power and really doesn't like the fact that they're kind of trying to be as clean as they can now that Kingpin is mayor. We see that there is clearly big conflict between the crime families, but when Buck is leaving, he says, I don't work for the mayor, I work for the man. And when he said this right away, I thought he is working for Vanessa. And we later on go to find out that that is actually the case. In the next scene with Kingpin and Vanessa, she says, I sent Buck. And she basically explains that she was trying to handle the situation that happened and keep everything in line and keep it from falling apart. Now, what this tells us is that Buck might not actually be loyal to Kingpin. He might be more loyal to Vanessa. And I believe this is going to be the case because I believe that Daniel will eventually be Kingpin's true right-hand man. And he probably gets into that position because Kingpin realizes that he can't trust Buck because he's actually in Vanessa's pocket, not his own, and might even be there just to keep tabs on Kingpin for Vanessa. And here we see more of the strain between the relationship. There are moments where they do seem to kind of remember the love that they had and even respect each other. Kingpin even says, I respect that. You're trying to keep the peace. You're trying to keep everything from falling apart. But Kingpin has a plan that he is not telling Vanessa, and part of that plan is for everything to fall apart, to fall into chaos. And the reason that he is probably keeping everything from Vanessa is because he is hurt because she had an affair with that person, Adam. And she even brings it up, you're punishing me because of Adam. And he claims he isn't, but he most likely is, because we know he's been getting his hands dirty. He's been doing stuff that's not clean, that's not mayoral behavior, and he's not telling her about it because he doesn't trust her. He even says in this scene, don't do anything that would lose my trust. But it's clearly already partially gone since he is keeping her in the dark about a lot of what he is doing under the table. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if all of the cops with the Punisher logo tattooed to them work for him, work for an organization that he has put together, and eventually when he makes being a vigilante illegal, they are essentially his task force, his crew that he sends to go get them. And I think this is a big part of what he isn't telling Vanessa. Now, back in the court, Matt and his team have basically decided that we're just going to put Hector on the stand and he'll tell the truth and the jury will hopefully believe him. But we get a very heartwarming story that makes the ending of this episode hurt so much more from Hector, saying that he finally saved up enough money for him and his wife to get their own place. They were living with his sister and they would finally have a place to their own. That's where he was going. He was taking the subway to go to their new home to leave flowers for his wife, so the next day when she showed up and he surprised her, there would be flowers there. Unfortunately, he ran into the situation down in the subway. But this is where Matt actually takes matters into his own hands. When Hector tells his story, Matt says, "You decided to risk your own safety to help somebody else, and it wasn't the first time, was it?" And this surprises everybody, including the judge and the other lawyer, the Hawk, because they met before, and Matt even got the judge to agree that the White Tiger, his alter ego, was completely off limits in regards to the case. So when they go into the judge's chambers, of course, both of them are equally pissed off. However, since Nikki Torres lied, it's really the only thing that Matt has to help Hector be proven innocent. Now, here's the very ironic and sad part about all of this. Matt meets with Hector back in jail, where Hector says, "This was not your secret to give away," which is very true. Now, Matt tries to say, "Hey, you can't be White Tiger anymore now. You know that, right? Like, everybody knows who you are. It's done. You can't go out anymore." But then Hector says something that obviously resonates with Matt. He says, "This isn't just a random thing I do. This is who I am. I want to help people." Matt says, "I think you might be surprised with how much you don't miss being him." But when he says this, you can tell by the look on his face, by the way his mouth is moving, that he doesn't even believe it. He's just trying to convince himself that he doesn't miss being Daredevil, even though he does. But the ironic and sad part is that Matt essentially gets Hector killed. Partly, he reveals that he's the White Tiger, so at the end, people know when the White Tiger is out there, it's Hector. So that's why he dies, but Matt did say, "Hey, you can't go out again. You can't go out as the White Tiger." Now, ultimately, it might not have mattered since the cops are crooked. They might have just went to Hector's place and killed him anyways, and they might have even killed his wife and his sister and his niece. But it's irrelevant because since they knew he was the White Tiger, they just waited for the White Tiger to come out, and that is partially due to Matt exposing his identity, which I think is going to come into play big time with Matt bringing back Daredevil. But we'll get to that in a bit. Now in court, we see why Matt revealed this, because now he can talk about all of the times that the White Tiger has saved people. They bring in many witnesses that he has saved, including cop reports from police officers saying that the White Tiger helped them when they were already in trouble, and that some cops even consider the White Tiger an ally. And if you noticed, and big shout out to the live stream here, Matt actually mentions Officer Morales, possibly the father of Miles Morales. We know that Miles Morales' father is a cop in New York City. And the president of Marvel Studios even mentioned at one point in time, once Beyond the Spider-Verse is done with Miles Morales' Spider-Man, he would love to see him in the MCU. Tom Holland also said that he would love to mentor a young Miles Morales and for Miles to eventually take the Spider-Man helm in the MCU. Plus, not to mention, in Spider-Man Homecoming, we met Miles' uncle, Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler, played by the Childish Gambino. So things are in motion now for Miles Morales to be in the MCU. Perhaps this is our next clue that he might be coming soon. So he makes the argument to the jury. Look, he goes out every night, puts his own life on the line to help other people, including police officers. So why would he attack 2 police officers and kill one, especially when he didn't have his amulet that gives him powers? Now, in between court sessions, while they're waiting, Matt goes to the courtroom alone, and in his hand he has the horn to his Daredevil cowl. And what he's most likely thinking in this moment is, I hope the justice system pulls through, because he quit being Daredevil. Daredevil could bring justice when the court failed. And right now, Matt is doing everything he can to not go back to being Daredevil. So he's most likely in the situation saying, please come through. Please, justice system work so I don't eventually have to go back to being Daredevil. And after they eventually do win the trial, when he's walking out of the courtroom with Hector and the news are all in his face, he says, we're grateful that justice was served. But then we see that Kingpin was watching, and the news reporter before did say that Mayor Fisk would be watching very closely. And then that name pops up on the TV screen, White Tiger Vigilante. goes free. And you can tell this really upsets Kingpin and puts him one step closer to making vigilantism illegal. So he gets his boy Daniel, who again is getting closer to becoming his right-hand man, to set up a meeting with Bibi, Ben Urich's niece, who he killed. He killed Ben Urich. But like he said, he's going to use her. We'll talk about that in just a bit as it closes the episode, but there's an awesome scene with Heather and Matt at Matt's apartment where he's cooking for her. This is obviously very impressive considering that he's blind, and even when he brings out a bottle of O'Melvins that him and Foggy got together. And they have a touchy moment about Foggy here, which again, we don't know if he's alive or dead at this point. There is a cool little detail though. When Matt pours it, notice he puts 2 fingers on the rim of each glass that he's pouring into. That's how we can actually tell how much he's poured. Again, showing how Matt essentially sees while being blind. He also lifts up a pot and feels the temperature of the steam. We also see him smell to tell if the food is ready. It's just really awesome attention to detail. Now, when Heather talks about Foggy being with God, Matt's face looks very interesting, especially if we keep in the back of our heads that Easter egg that Marvel gave us referring to Foggy faking his own death. Does Matt look this really interesting way because he knows Foggy is alive? Or is this sort of a stoic / mournful face? Marvel did confirm Foggy is going to be in season 2. We're assuming it's flashbacks, but maybe he's alive. But to end the episode, Kingpin is meeting with Bibi, and he says that the case was a miscarriage of justice for Hector Ayala. And what he says is very interesting. He says, courts fail, juries get it wrong, I should know. So he is still acting like whatever he was charged for in the past for the Daredevil Netflix series, that was a mistake and that he has never actually been a criminal. And when he was put in jail before, the jury got it wrong. He's a good guy. That's the facade that he's putting on right now. Then he goes back to that word, vigilante, a masked vigilante, a murderer is now allowed to roam the streets, and that vigilantes are a threat to society. He says that they operate above the law. They are not heroes, and they cover their faces because they're cowards. But we all know why masked vigilantes and heroes wear masks. It's obviously to protect their identity, but it's also because if people find out who they are, they'll attack their loved ones to get to them. They could also simply just go to your house and kill you and track you very easily. We all know why heroes wear masks. Kingpin is just making excuses because vigilantes took him down as a crime lord. But the interesting part is that he finishes by saying he ran on a promise and he plans to keep it. When he says he plans to keep it, that's where White Tiger gets shot in the head, and we see that it was somebody wearing a Punisher symbol on their chest. Now, I don't think this was the actual Punisher. It's a crooked cop that works for Kingpin, and this lines up with what he said. He's keeping his promise. He is getting rid of vigilantes, and again, I think those wearing the Punisher logo are actually working for Kingpin. And he says the law must prevail, meaning he's about to take the law into his own hands as mayor of New York City and make being a vigilante illegal. Now, what's really sad about this ending is that the actor who plays Hector, Camar de los Reyes, he actually died in real life, so this is very sad to see. And if you notice at the end as the credits roll, you hear the sound of the beach and that frog that he was mentioning to Matt in the beginning chirping. And it's nice and peaceful sounding, but there is also over it some dark and ominous music, telling us that peace is not coming. Now, there's the question of, since Hector was wearing the amulet, is he actually dead? I'm assuming he is. You can't really take a shot to the head like that, even with powers that help you regenerate. That looked like a clean shot through, and sadly, I don't think there's any recovering from that. But that is Daredevil Born Again, episode 3. We got back to the courtroom in this episode. It was a little bit different than the first 2 episodes, so go ahead, let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. Did you enjoy it, and how are you liking the Daredevil Born Again series so far? Let us know. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on our future Daredevil Born Again breakdowns, and of course, so you can stay up to date on the latest Marvel news, rumors, and leaks. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.